everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Kira. So in today's video, I thought that I would make a list or talk to you about the books that I've read recently. All of the books that I've read in the month of January until March. And this is purely because I feel like at the end of the year, I always do the best books of that year. And sometimes it can be a good book for someone else not being reviewed by myself. So I feel like this is just a good way to wrap up all of the books that I've read, all of the books that I'm currently reading. It also would give me some sort of accountability to all of you and also to myself for my reading goal. These are all the books that I've read. I would want to talk about the books that I've read in the book club of A Game of Tomes, organized by Emma and Carolyn from their booktube channel. If you don't subscribe to them yet, please do. They're my favorite. So basically in the book club, we have to read one classics per month. In January, we have to read Ernest Hemingway, A Farewell to Arms, and in February, we have to read Once There Was a War by John Steinbeck. So as you can see, both of these carry the same theme, which is about the war. This concerns about the First World War and this concerns about the Second World War. However, they are different in terms of the writing style as well as the genre. That's my daughter, if you can see right there. The first book, of course, is A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. At first, I thought that I didn't like this book because I was having such a hard time reading Hemingway's writing style. So in this story, we are following an American, I think, medical staff joining the World War I in Italy. So he has been assigned to be in Italy. At the same time, I really love his then friendship with Rinaldi, a pure Italian guy, but Rinaldi keeps on calling him baby, and it's such a very cute, very nice friendship they have, and quickly becomes a romantic love story between Henry and Catherine, British nurse who have also been sent to work in the war. This book is really good. I didn't thought I'm going to like it because I don't feel like I really like Ernest Hemingway's writing. No, you cannot put it there. When I ventured into Hemingway, I was kind of shocked because he is a very straightforward guy. He writes fiction as if he's writing a non-fiction, but nevertheless it turns out very, very nice. It turns out very, very devastating, heartbreaking. I literally threw this book across the room after I finished reading it. There's the A Farewell to Arms by Hemingway. The edition that I got doesn't have the alternative endings in this, but if you find a special edition from the same vintage Hemingway, you would find the special edition having the alternative endings provided by Hemingway himself, because he could not decide which ending would be the best for it. But eventually I feel like this ending is just... Second one is, of course, John Steinbeck, Once There Was a War, for the February read. I don't have much to say about it except that I'm quite bored out of it. I think I give this book 3 stars. I love his writing. Nevertheless, I feel like I would want to read his writings in a fiction book instead of a non-fiction, instead of just a war correspondence. And I feel like, and as provided by him as well in the foreword of this book, this war correspondence help with the war effort, with certain political or social reasons behind this war correspondence to be given out to people at that point of time. I was reading this book via an audiobook when I was driving, so most of the time I tend to get like spaced out when I was reading this. It's safe to say that I feel like I need to reread this with my own eyes instead of listening to it via an audiobook, because I don't think I get much out of it. The third book is also an audiobook that I've listened to because I subscribe to the Audible Plus, and of course we get to access to free audiobooks in Audible. So I found this book. I think it's called The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. All in all, it's a very good, very comprehensive book regarding the title. But when I was reading this book, when I was listening to this book, I was reading it from the POV of a mother. So it gives me a different perspective, of course. But again, because this book examines about the behavior or the abuse or the things that has been or to see from the emotionally immature parents, it doesn't give you the pointers of what you should do instead of what you should not do. When I was listening to this book, I was like, okay, that's what not to be, but what about how to be? So I think that throughout the book, that was my main thing that keep being in my mind. I don't know if I should expect this from this book, but overall, it satisfies me for the examination of the emotionally immature parent. Fourth book that I've read in this span of 3 months is A Man Called Ove by Frederick Backman. I think that this is his debut novel. It concerns about a very grumpy old man who has recently died. I'm not sure at that point how long has she passed, but this man is like so done with the world, so done with the neighbors, and eventually one new neighbor has come into town, has come into the neighborhood, and has attempted to make a friendly relations with him, and that quickly has turned his life upside down. Few times in this book, you are presented or you are facing his ways of ending his life because he just doesn't want to live in the life where his wife is not in it. Like, he keep on saying that I would want to join you, I wish you were here, those kind of things. And that coming from a very grumpy old man is so, I don't know, it feels so heartwarming, but at the same time it's very heart-wrenching because like it is not an uncommon sight to see a grumpy old man. Think that deep inside are actually a very loving and caring and kind people deep inside. Of a stretch of imagination at all. And because of the very mundane and very basic state of that, I feel like this just hit me hard. I loved so much reading this book, and I cried as well because of how heartwarming this is. This is easily a 5 stars read for me. This is a very easy read. I really recommend you to pick this one up if you feel like some kind of, you're just bored or you just want some pick me up, but at the same time you want to wrench your heart. This is a very good book to go. So please listen to me on this one. The next one is also, of course, another recommendation from my favorite person in the book world, which is Emma. She has read The Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. This is just pure gold in the examination of life and death and mortality and acceptance. In this book, we are following a normal mortal guy named Louis when he had been facing a lot of life issues and eventually was turned into a vampire by a vampire named Lestat, and they had quickly become dependent to each other. It feels so heart-wrenching again because of how much, actually, as I see it, Lestat needs a companion in his immortal life. And when also they have made the worst decision ever to turn a 5-year-old girl into a vampire. So imagine this girl having maybe a thought of a 30-year-old woman, but still trapped in a 5-year-old girl body. I love the writing, I love the stories. I think I cried reading this book, and then I heard that this author actually made or write this book to cope with the loss of her own child. And then it makes so much sense because this book also deals with that, with part of losing someone. This is just another 5 stars read for me if you haven't read it, and if you want some kind of a vampire-ish story, you want to read this book. This book is actually a book that I decided to read along with my friend, but I don't know what's the purpose of the read along because we literally did not talk about the book at all together, and I feel like she feels the same way with me, that this book is not as what you thought it would be. And this is Ocean Vuong, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I think I heard this from Christy Anne Jones from also a booktube channel. This is one of her best books that she's read, I think last year or the previous year, but this is just not it for me. This book is basically an embodiment of letters written by a Vietnamese immigrant son. The nickname is Little Dog. Little Dog's letters to his mother, who I believe was dying at that point from cancer. We are following his life as a very small Vietnamese guy living in America, in a very downtown or rundown place, because it is filled with a lot of druggies, a lot of abusive neighborhood and such. I feel like this book lacks direction at most. I could understand the heart-wrenching part because the writing, no doubt, is very, very beautiful, but then it's just that, because at first we did follow the history of his mom, his grandmother, in crossing the border, in surviving the life in America as an immigrant, and then try to raise him, the war flashbacks, the abuse flashbacks that both his grandmother and the mother has had experienced, and eventually his own flashbacks to those days where he also had been abused by his mother. It was very gut-wrenching at that point, but then it quickly turned out to become the stories about him and another boy that he fell in love with, I believe, and eventually his loss, his grieving point over all of those. I don't think anyone would want to tell their mother, their dying mother, albeit that she would not read these letters, about his experience in sexual intercourse with a guy, with his boyfriend. I think I'm giving this book 3.5 or 3.75 just because the writing is really, really great. This is a fairly short book, but I was having so much difficulty in finishing this book, and not just because of the very visual descriptions of the relationship that he has with this guy, and also the very visual descriptions of the abuse that he had or he gotten, or all of them gotten from this world. It doesn't captivate me as much as I want it to. So this is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. Now the last book that I've recently read and finished and loved it, and has become one of my top tier classics as of now is this is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Oh my god, I love her writing so much. I love the theme of gothic stories. Is it haunted? Is it not? Is it a person? Is it not? Is it just her imaginations? Is it just her gut feeling? We are following, of course, Jane Eyre, living in her very unfortunate life, being abused and have no single soul in this earth to love her as she is, and then she was eventually sent off to a boarding school where later she had kind of turned her life around, basically that. And this is very heartwarming stories as well, because it shows that much can a child change their life, because sometimes their life is just being subjected to one person, and then that one person can just do anything to them, and as a child, you would not be able to change anything about your life. But once your life has gone off the course of actually deciding it for yourself, then you can see actually how much they can go. And it's not much. Of course, after graduating from this school, she was sent to be a governess in this household, and later was introduced to Rochester, Mr. Rochester, and quickly becomes a gothic romance story about her and Mr. Rochester. But then, of course, a secret has been discovered by her and by the household, and she had to make a decision whether to leave the love of her life or to stay and live in the sinful life, some sort. This is one of my favorite line in this book. I don't want to ruin or spoil this book for you, but this is what she has to say about nature. Nature seemed to me benign and good. I thought she loved me, outcast as I was, and I, who from man could anticipate only mistrust, rejection, insult, clung to her with filial fondness. Tonight, at least, I would be her guest, as I was her child. My mother would lodge me without money and without price. So this is what she has to say to nature, and it's really, really beautiful. You can see how much I love this book. If you have been reading classics for a while, have been reading children's classic, introduction to many easy classics, you can start with this for kind of intermediate ground for classics, because I feel like the language in this book is very accessible. It is very beautifully written. The story is very captivating, would keep you hooked in, to the point that I also download and listen to the audiobook when I was driving, because I want to know what happened. When I have to stop reading it physically, I want to continue it in the car while driving, because I want to know what happened. That's all. Those are all 7 books that I've managed to read for the past 3 months. So that's about it. I thank you so much if you have lasted this long. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all of you, all of the new faces. I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.